everyone, and welcome back to Sunday Reads with Renee. My name is Renee here at Simply Renee. And for this video, I'm going to be doing a double book review of two nonfiction books, The Odyssey of Phillis Wheatley by David Waldstreicher and On Morrison by Namwali Serpell. And these are two books that I really enjoyed and I've been wanting to do more full book reviews on for a while, and I hope you will enjoy. Before I begin, I just want to let everyone know that I will be using alternative words and phrases just because of YouTube rules and regulations, and I'm going to be revealing plot details, therefore spoilers are ahead. The first one is The Odyssey of Phillis Wheatley by David Waldstreicher. Published in 2023, this nonfiction work is a biography on Phillis Wheatley, who was a talented poet in the 18th century and noted today as the first Black woman in America to have a book of work published under her own name. And Phillis Wheatley was a very talented poet. Her book of poetry was published in 1773 and was admired by George Washington and disliked by Thomas Jefferson, which doesn't surprise me there. But basically, what this is a biography, of course, but it's actually more than that. What Waldstreicher does is that he really ups it to the next level to really give a full, broader look at the life of Phillis Wheatley as much as he can through primary and secondary sources. The biography starts with Phillis's life as an enslaved person in America, to her achievements, freedom, and her untimely passing at the age of 31. But we also get the in-betweens of her life in Boston and other areas like London. We get to understand a little bit more about her life, her thought process, her thinking process, as well as her writing achievements and how she created these very great, insightful poems on vast different topics. And as someone who's not a poetry fan, I do get a lot of it from her poems that are very talented and greatly worded. I love the rhyming, the way the structure goes. So she has a lot of great talent in these poems that really hit you right here in the heart to make you think a little bit, and you can truly enjoy them whether you're a poetry fan or not. Streicher also does very well to really put the poems into perspective in this biography through all the sources that he has on hand to really show a lot about Phillis's talent as well as what the poetry means and the wording behind it, the interpretations, as well as how these poems express Phillis's intelligence or thought process and how it overall shapes her entire life. What we do get out of The Odyssey of Phillis Wheatley, though, is a more enhanced biography on the person herself and just everything that we have on hand. And for Waldstreicher, he used a lot of primary and secondary sources as much as he could find to paint as much of a picture of who Phillis Wheatley was, her thought process, and her writing process. But we also get more of a sense of just who she was and the life she was living at that time as both an enslaved person and someone who was later emancipated by the Wheatley family themselves. And what I liked about it is that we get the broader sense of who she was as well. And the thing about Wheatley is that she's very much a figure that we don't know a lot about just due to the fact of the time and place in which she lived. All we have to go is by her poems and what's available. And because she wasn't really critiqued and looked at a little bit more until the 19th century and then much later in the 20th century, what we have is what we have. And we're able to see how Waldstreicher really constructs a whole big biography as much as he can to give a very structured view of her, as well as really expressing, especially in the analysis on her poems, how they relate to the time and events of her life that she's going through at that moment, especially her enslavement. And something interesting about Waldstreicher is that he was at a conference I went to in March 2026 to do a lecture on this book and Phillis Wheatley. And he said something that I thought was very important, which is that he, from his own perspective, believes that what Phillis Wheatley's legacy is like is her poems being very much anti-slavery. And if you read a lot of Phillis Wheatley's poems, you'll see a lot of that is embedded in the entire structure of many of her poems. So I do recommend reading her poems, but also this book. I thought it was well written, well structured, it's very engrossing. It really doesn't miss a beat in a lot of the detailed views that Waldstreicher really puts into perspective. And I just very much enjoyed it, and I hope you will too if you haven't read it yet. On Morrison by Namwali Serpell. This 2026 nonfiction work is not necessarily a biography on Toni Morrison like I had originally thought, but more of a critical analysis on Morrison herself, her works, and what made them such a huge success, how Morrison became a success from it. And a lot of it is very good in delving into the themes, the thought processes, the critiques, and what Morrison herself was trying to write, interpret, and what she truly wanted in some of her most beloved works. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Toni Morrison, she is a celebrated Black female author from the 20th century who wrote some fantastic works: Beloved, The Bluest Eye, Jazz, and Paradise, as well as Song for Solomon. And she truly is a gifted writer. And I really liked this book because when I read it for the winter 2026 reads, which I'll leave a link in the description, I really thought this was an excellent one because it really delves into everything about Morrison, what her thought process was, her opinions, how she structured her work. So it's actually a pretty good critical analysis of it. On Morrison really begins with Serpell wanting to try and really do this critical analysis because she has students who gave her a lot of things to think about in terms of thought processes and different interpretations of her stories. And so the way Serpell structures it is that she begins with Morrison's 1970 debut novel, The Bluest Eye, and then goes into other works such as Beloved, Jazz, and Paradise. What you'll find in this book is that Morrison really didn't put all her works in a single box. While it does delve into some themes such as race, racism, enslavement, and its legacy, you also find a vast amount of different stories as well as themes that go throughout these works depending on which one you read. In the case of Sula, this is a 1973 work that is mostly about female friendship, but it's more than that. It's also about identity, the history of enslavement and racism, as well as rebellion, overcoming challenges, and the struggle to really overcome them as well. And it's all centered on the character of Sula and how she ended up becoming the center of the novel, even though she doesn't have a huge part in the beginning of the book itself. We also have the book Paradise, which was published in the late 1990s and is about the history and the legacy of enslavement and violence, but it also delves into other things such as gender and religion. And when it comes to the religious aspect of Paradise, it fills in a lot of what Morrison was going through at that time, where she was having a reckoning with her own religion. She was born and raised a Catholic, but she found herself at that time in the late 90s really becoming a dissatisfied Catholic, as is described in Serpell's book. And she's really trying to grapple a lot with that and have a bit of a reckoning. So, in a way, Paradise becomes a way of her writing out those feelings in story form and really get the storytelling to go forward, which I think was a neat idea and fits in with the whole aspect of writers what you if they know. But I like the fact that Morrison wasn't someone who just wrote books that fit into one single box. She writes something that is very similar to her critique in prose and what she's trying to say, but it also expands even further beyond that. So there's actually a lot of different interpretations you can take from these works, which is what Serpell tries to write in on Morrison and does succeed in that. Overall, I do think Serpell did an excellent job of really critiquing the works of Toni Morrison, whether that was her books and plays and poems. But I really think Serpell does a good job about trying to give more of a thought provoking narrative. And what she's trying to do is she's trying to say this about Toni Morrison, what she's trying to analyze, but it also gives you a chance to either agree, disagree, or maybe just think a little bit more and have your own discussions, which I'll always love. At least that's what I interpreted from on Morrison. And what I really took away from this is a lot of things about Morrison herself and more of appreciation for her work process, her thinking, what she was trying to interpret, what she was trying to tell, the thought process and the writing process that really goes into this work. So overall, I think this was an excellent work. The only thing I disagree with is in the summary of this book, where it stated that Morrison's public persona was overshadowing her entire work, which I don't agree with necessarily because I do think even though Morrison is a celebrated author rightly, I don't think that her public persona really overshadowed her works. I think that her works are great. I've read a handful of them. I still have more to read, like Song of Solomon, but I do think that her works overall are really great. I myself don't think they are overshadowed by her public persona. I even like the audiobooks because I wanted to do a little bit of a comparison there. And the fact that Morrison actually narrated her own books is pretty interesting because she was known for doing a lot of theater and drama in her youth, and she really has a great speaking voice when she narrates these audiobooks. So if you're more someone who's into the audiobook versions of books, try to do Toni Morrison's narration of her books because she really does great. Her voice is perfect for it. But basically, On Morrison is a great work. It's interesting that it was more of a literary critique than anything else, but it did leave me with more of an appreciation for the immense talent and thought processes that Toni Morrison went through, but also how she was inspired by different writers like William Faulkner and Virginia Woolf. But she also had her own way of writing things and doing storytelling. So, all in all, I do recommend On Morrison because it gives you thought provoking moments and allows you to be open to any kind of discussion. I thank you so much for tuning in. Now tell me what you think. Have you read these books? Do you agree with me, not agree with me? Are you a fan of Toni Morrison, Phillis Wheatley, or both? Please let me know in the comments section. I would love to hear from you, and I welcome all discussions as always. I thank you so much again for tuning in. Please be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the notification bell. I'll be back on Wednesday with another video, Friday with a food video, and Sunday with another video as well. Also look out for shorts. I'm starting to put a little bit more out as I go, and I hope you enjoy them. I'd also like to thank everybody who is subscribing so far, as well as watching, liking, commenting my videos. I truly appreciate it and helps my channel to grow. I thank you again so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.